Okay, Lewin's change model. So the late Kurt Lewin, sometimes dubbed the father of modern social psychology, he created this change model. It's essentially a really interesting way to frame how people go through change and the psychological process. Now, Lewin was exiled from his homeland in Germany in the 30s and made a new life for himself in the US. So he probably knows a thing or two about change because he's experienced some really fundamental change in his life. So I think that really helped him come up with this model back in the 40s. This is obviously a super high level version of it. Feel free to Google Lewin's change model to find out more depth. But essentially, he describes it in three big stages. The first one is unfreezing. So this is where you've got your status quo is frozen in place. And before you can actually begin change, you have to unfreeze the status quo. So when inertia is overcome and existing habits and mindsets are broken down, that's actually when you can begin the change journey. The second bit, change. This is a period of confusion as the old ways are being challenged, the new way is not yet clear. So you're in this sort of uncertain phase. And this is where you see some of the feelings that we talked about earlier, like being scared, uncertainty, difficult and fuzzy. You see them in this middle transition bit where people are still trying to get to grips. They're kind of stuck in limbo. They're between the old world and the new world. They're not quite there yet. The ending is refreezing. So once some new mindsets and habits have been formed and established, a degree of psychological comfort is restored. Now, I highlighted psychological comfort again because I think the change process is a psychological one. So adopting agile is a psychological process that people have to go through to transition away from what they believed before into a new set of beliefs. And what this tells me, again, is that transformation is not possible without first breaking down existing habits and mindsets. And you may see the status quo, if you see the status quo and mindsets persisting in your transformation, but you're progressing with the transformation, then it's probably an illusion. Your change is probably superficial if you're using Scrum, but you've still got the hierarchical command and control structure. You've probably only achieved superficial change, or camouflaged waterfall, as I sometimes call it. So what I've picked up from this is that the first step is always the hardest, and the theory is quite clear, and there are other change models that you can look into. And honestly, they all say the very similar stuff. They all say that until we begin to let go of the status quo, we cannot embrace change. And any change that you get without breaking down the status quo, mindsets and beliefs will only be superficial. And this is where I see the birth of fake agile, superficial agile, or just doing agile, but not actually being agile. I once worked with a transformation. I once went on a transformation and we were using a third party who claimed to be agile. They said they could deliver a lovely big program for us using SAFe. And when we looked into the details a bit, on the surface, it all sounded great. You know, they were saying the right words, they had the right pictures in front of us, they made a really good pitch. In the details, though, it started to look a bit more fuzzy. I noticed that the Scrum Master was dictating the work to the development teams. I noticed that they had, development sprints and then a sprint to test what they just developed. I noticed that the technical approach and decisions were conveyed to the team, so they weren't very autonomous. I noticed that people were tracking time, like how long you spend working on a certain task. I'm pretty sure there was a Gantt chart that just had all the sprints on it at some point. And although all the right words were being said, it just didn't have the mindset and the beliefs and the values and principles that has to go with agile in order to make it a success. So it was very superficial. So even though you're seeing the right buzzwords, you have to really look beneath the surface to understand if your change is actually true.